going to start today talking about literacy instruction. You see all of the components of literacy instruction up on the board. All of these components have standards. When we talk about literacy instruction in the classroom, all of this is integrated. All of it works together. And so when we're talking today, you'll hear us talk about all of these standards as we go along. But today we're here to focus in on reading. We want to look at what reading looks like in the elementary school classroom. I wish I could stand up here and tell you that I had this magic bullet or this magic program that every child in the state of North Carolina, if the teachers followed this program, that every child would be reading by 3rd grade. But we know that that's not possible. And so what we want to do today is to show you some of the best practices, some of the skill development, some of the strategies that these classroom teachers use on a daily basis, because there are some sequencing and some best practices that can be used for reading programs. When you think about a child learning to read, please think about when a child learns to speak. They learn the language, they learn how to talk. When they are first born, they are surrounded by parents or siblings that are constantly talking with them all the time. And so children learn how to speak by the other people around them modeling for them. The other people don't realize they're modeling for the child, but that's how children learn how to speak. And I think about this in the reading terms too, because when we are in the classroom, and I say we because I was in the classroom for so long, when we are in the classroom, we do the same type of things. Children need to hear things read to them. I wish, if I were in charge of the world, you know, when you have a baby and you're going out for the first day, you're going home, they take you out in the little wheelchair, and that nurse has the little card that says, now when you get home, you need to do this and this and this. I wish on the bottom it said you need to read to your child every day. Because if we had that going on, that would be another way of modeling reading for children from the very beginning. But that's not happening, so we're going to deal with things as we go along. So when you hear these teachers talk, you will hear them talk about the read aloud and how the read aloud is so important as a jumping off point for them in their instruction. You will also hear, Dr. Oxendine said she wasn't going to get into it, there are two big camps about reading. There's the top-down method and the bottom-up method. You know, bottom-up meaning skills first, and then learn how to read. Top-down meaning start with the reading and go down into the skills you need. You need both. You need concentration on the skills, the basic skills, and you need concentration in immersing those children in reading all the time. Over the Christmas holiday, Dr. Oxendine and I had a conversation, and she said, Carolyn, I'd like to have some vocabulary that we would know that every teacher in this state right now knows in the classroom in teaching reading, and everyone that walks out of institutes of higher education, that they would know about reading and what's important for reading. And so our consultants came up with the list that's up on the board of what we thought were the main vocabulary that everyone should know if they were a teacher of reading. You will see the big 5 listed in there, which we'll talk about briefly in a few minutes. You will also see standards and curriculum that Tiffany and Maria talk to you about all the time. You will see, where's Amy J? You will see differentiation, core instruction. All of those are terms that everyone should know, but you will see at the bottom is comprehension. Comprehension is what we're aiming for, that children understand what they're reading, not just calling words. This is the reading process. On the right-hand side at the very bottom, you see advanced reader. Advanced readers are what we all are right now. You have gotten to the stage where you are an advanced reader. If you go to the left-hand side of the chart, it shows you the process that all of us go through. When we pick up a cold read, something that we've never read before, we all go through this process. You may not realize you do, but you go through, you scan it, then you read it, you think about it, You may write some things down, you go back, you pull out quotes, you pull out vocabulary, and then you process how you're going to use that information. Everybody goes through that process, but children need to be taught that process. It doesn't come as something that's innate to them. It has to be taught. And on the right-hand side, you see the stages that children will go through. And there is no magic number that says a child will stay as an emergent reader for this long or a transitional reader for that long. They will go through the stages, but they will go through at their own pace. We put at your seats what we take out into the field with us all the time. It's a continuum of building skills for reading. When we go out in the field, teachers will say to us, I know that if there's somebody that needs some, the girls can hand some around. They will say, I know that my child, this child has deficits in this area, but what do I do? How do I deal with it? What you see are the big five listed down the left-hand side, the big five from the National Reading Panel. And then on the right-hand side are all of the sub-skills that make up the big five. And so if you look, and I went through this weekend for every single one of these sub-skills, the top 3 categories can be found in our Reading Foundation standards. The bottom 2, vocabulary and comprehension, are found in language standards, listening and speaking, informational text, literature, or writing. So all of these are found in our standards. It's completely aligned to our standards. But these skills are things that have to be taught. Your children who are stronger readers will not need to spend a lot of practice on it. The ones who are struggling will need lots of repetition and lots of intervention as we go through the reading process with them. The second page that you have is a comprehension continuum, and it just takes it a little bit further as to when children are at the point of comprehending, and comprehension of vocabulary can start from day 1. There's no specific skill set that you have to be able to comprehend and to build vocabulary. That can start from day 1 in kindergarten. But this is a comprehension continuum that takes you through literal questions, retelling, and into where the children are getting deeper and deeper into how they're understanding connected text. They're also on here, what we like about it in taking it out into the field are questions for teachers to use to work themselves toward working toward higher order thinking with children. You've all seen this. We've done this before. These are at one of our standards, and we have put them in stair steps for you because the standards build on each other. And so what I want to talk about right now is differentiation. And you're going, oh, these teachers were so good. They're so good with their differentiation. But if you're a 2nd grade teacher and you're teaching the 2nd grade standard that's up on the board, you teach that as your whole group lesson, your mini lesson. When you go into small groups, that's when you differentiate. There may be children who need to come down to the 1st grade standard, or other standards from 1st grade that would support that 2nd grade standard. But of course, you know, there may be children who need, Snake, I know you're in here too, there may be children who need a standard up 3rd grade or a 4th grade standard that you can work on. So you have to differentiate for the children that are in your classroom, and they're going to share that with you today, what they do in their classrooms. So this is what to look for. These are the things that you'll see in their videos. I want to tell you, none of it is staged. It almost looks like it is because they're so good and it's so many commonalities among them. It was not staged. We have Carla Castine and Evans and Mia Johnson from my team who went out into the field and said, we need some expert teachers. We want to come in and film. And then we asked permission to come into their classrooms. We said, we just want you to do what you normally do. And that's what they did in these videos. We took hours and hours of video, and then Diego Diasis, who is on our team as well, took all of these hours and put them down into little teeny clips so that you can see just a part of their classroom. So, and when I say you see commonalities, good instruction is good instruction is good instruction. You're going to see these best practices. You're going to see these skills-based lessons that they're going to show you. And before we finish up, I finish up and get to the real reason you're here. These are I want to talk a little bit about technology. You're going to see in their videos how they embed technology in what they're doing. These are resources, free resources. The ones that are listed up here are free resources that teachers can use to build lessons, that children can use to read from. There are also a multitude of lessons out there that you have to pay for that are, on iPads, apps, and things like that you can use, or technology curriculum. But these are free resources that you use. What I love about the videos you're going to see is how they embed it into their instruction. I've got to get my glasses out now because when we start, I want to read you this quote that I found from research. The primary ingredient for every child's reading success is a classroom teacher with the expertise to support teaching reading to children who have a variety of needs and abilities. And that's what you're going to see them do today. The way we're going to set it up is, Carla, if you'll come over and change over to our videos. I'm going to introduce you to the teacher. We'll see her clip, and then she'll explain real quickly what she did in her clip. First teacher we have with us today, we're going to start kindergarten work up so you can see the progression, is Tanya Baldwin, and she's from Richmond County, and she has with her out in the audience somewhere today her principal, Willette Surgeon, and her instructional coach, Haley Hall. So Tanya, if you'll come up and we'll get ready to show your video.
Bottom, okay? It just will be a straight line. There you go. Good. Now can you find this letter? What is that? It does say What's his name? You. You see one? Yeah. Yay. Which way do you turn him? Good. And what's your last letter, Ziberius?
S.
S. And up there? Good job, Ziberius. Put your finger on the first letter in that word. Good, very good. What is your first letter?
B.
Very good, B. Love it. What is your first letter?
A.
Now see if you two can do it without me touching the words. I am a red penguin. Oh, that's beautiful. This means I'm going to help you, okay? It means I might ask questions and want you to answer. It means you might ask questions and need me to answer. Can we work on that together today?
Yeah.
Okay. Key details. What are key details? Sophie.
Something that's important.
Something that is very important in the story. Please tell your partner, why do you think the author wrote this book? Most important question, why did the author write this book? About an odd bird named Tacky. What did the author want us to learn? Sophie?
Probably because when he saw some penguins, probably because something popped up in his book that he wanted to write about fictional penguins.
Oh, so he loved real penguins so much he wanted to turn one into fictional. But the question is now is what should we have learned? After I read a book, I think to myself, now what should I learn from this? Me as a person, what should I learn? I learned something about reading that book. Do you know what I learned? I learned that everybody's different. you for having me today. Thank you for letting me share my literacy instruction. We hope that the classrooms you visit in our presentation will provide you with insight into a typical day's work where growing great readers is our ultimate goal. Best practice for the 90-minute literacy block includes students involved in whole group instruction, small group targeted instruction, and of course independent practice. In my kindergarten lesson on this particular day, you saw whole group instruction there towards the end, where we focused on the reading standard where students learn to ask and answer questions. 5 and 6-year-olds do not come to school knowing how to ask questions about a text or answer questions about a text until you model that for them. I asked, what did you learn from Tacky? That was a fictional book that we read that day. Previously, we had read and studied about real penguins. So our goal for that week was to compare nonfiction to fictional text and the relationship in those stories or in those types of books. Students should think about these types of questions when listening or reading to stories. Like I asked, why did the author write this story? I had previously taught 3rd grade, and that always stumbled students when it came to assessments. So we're trying to give them those types of questions early on now in the kindergarten classroom. I also asked them, what lesson did we learn? That's always another difficult question for students as they progress through the years. You saw partners or collaborative pairs where the students turn and talk about the question that's being asked. That is something that we model and practice in the first few days of school. They turn and talk to their partner. We might say, peanut butter, it's your turn to talk. You tell Jelly, why do you think the author wrote this book? And you notice the students had little index cards in their hand. That's a strategy that we use if they're comfortable with the question. It's a smiley face. If they're not comfortable with the question, it's a sad face or a straight line face. So that means their partner can take over in the conversation. It also lets us know, it gives us a formative assessment of where the child is at that moment. We had small group instruction. This was a group that may have been struggling. So they were being pulled to link alphabetic principle, which is a standard. Linking letters to sounds, distinguishing initial sounds and letters. Emerging state of reading, standard. We're learning print concepts, sounding out phonetically spelled words and knowing their sight words. It's a big challenge for us in kindergarten, is to learn those 100 sight words. Independent work was going on. They were writing about the fictional character, Tacky the penguin. They had previously written about and used an anchor chart in the room about real penguins. They learned so much about real penguins. We go on all kinds of virtual field trips. So we went to the South Pole. We went and visited real penguins, and they saw the daddy penguins taking care of the egg. So they learned so much. So when we got to the fictional story, it was really fun, but they could see some things that Tacky did that real penguins also do. They were able to write key details from the story, another standard. In the kindergarten classroom environment, it's very important. Students must be immersed in print-rich environment. In my classroom, you may have noticed the sight words are on snowflakes. The sight words are in our doorway. When they enter the door, they're on our back door. They have to high-five it and say the word as they go out. It's up and down the hallway in our school. So these sight words are everywhere for them to see and to learn. Vocabulary for our nonfiction text, very important, and vocabulary academic words that we want them to know early on so that they can be successful readers. There was a Wonderwall anchor chart. You may have noticed that at the very beginning of the video. This anchor chart is about things we wonder about. Do penguins have bees? Maybe you've never wondered that, but maybe a 5-year-old did. I want to know how peanut butter's made. So we talked about George Washington Carver. So we can put sticky notes on there about things we wonder. There's a wonderful website, it's free, Wonderopolis, that you can visit, the children can visit, and we can find out about the things we wonder about. Thank you for having me.
Well, Carla's starting the next video for our 1st grade classroom. I hope you heard Tanya say standards, standards, standards. everything revolves around the standards. And then the reading process sort of wraps around those standards. So next we're going to bring up Jennifer Patterson from Alexander County. So let's see your video, Jennifer.
It's closed in with a consonant, and that makes the short sound. Can everybody show me our door closed? Here's our door closed, and it's our short sound. So what does this say? Bed. But if our door is open and there's no consonant, it's B. It has our long vowel sound. Okay, so we're going to look at some of our words. Okay? This is closed. Everybody show me closed. And what is it? M. And what's this? I. And she.
And he tells us that when we're reading the story, we need to think about it so that we can what? So we can retell it and talk about it, right? And so we're going to do some retelling today. We're going to talk about the beginning and the middle and the end of a story, okay? Now we know the story has some important parts, and we have our retelling rope up here. And what does the castle on the retelling rope, what does it remind us we need to think about? Aiden, no, the castle. Think about the castle. What does it tell us we need to think about?
The beginning.
Haley, what does the castle remind us?
The setting.
The setting. So it's important for us to think about what is the setting of the story. Mason, you still have an idea? What is it?
I go down the hill and there's like this pile of snow and I jump at it and I go psh, right into the snow. I get my face in the snow.
Are you on a sled?
Yeah, I go.
All right.
I get my face in the snow.
So sledding. So there are lots of fun things that we can do in the snow. And I bet you have some more ideas. But today we're going to read The Snowy Day. We're going to read The Snowy Day. And we're going to see what fun adventures Peter has in the snow. Now, when we're finished reading it, remember we talked about Jabber and how Jabber reminds us that we need to be able to retell a story. So I want you to be thinking about it so you can retell the story. We're going to talk about what happened in the beginning, what happened in the middle, and what happened at the end. Okay? I want you to read to me.
Frog lives over here in a bed.
We're going to go back and we're going to read this page right here. Now, you see that word? Now I want you to look at this page. What do you see right here? But what does it have on the end? Right, flowers.
Thank you for allowing me to be here today to share about my first grade classroom. First graders need explicit instruction in phonics to help them build their reading skills. And in my video clip, you saw my students working on reading foundational skills in phonics. They were learning their short and long vowel sounds in open and closed syllables, and so they would use their arms to help them remember that a short vowel sound is closed in by a consonant and a long vowel sound is made when we have an open syllable. And so this phonics knowledge will help them as they are decoding words when they're reading. Another part of the video, you saw how I was reviewing how to retell a story. Retelling is at the basic and foundational level of the comprehension continuum.
And I use the retelling rope to help frame my students' thinking so they can refer back to the retelling rope as they are retelling the story. And then I went into my read aloud. Read alouds are an important part of reading instruction because you can model all aspects of reading during a read aloud. So as I'm reading, I'm modeling my thinking, I'm modeling the things that I'm wondering about. I wonder these things out loud so my students can hear that, and I tell them the predictions I'm making. And I do this so that they can carry that over and do that when they are reading their text independently to themselves. What the video didn't capture was the opportunity that my students had after the story to turn and talk to a partner. It's important that they have opportunity to speak and talk about the text. And so they talked about the beginning and the middle and the end, and then they were given the opportunity to write about that too. First graders learn to comprehend text as they listen to stories read to them and as they are given opportunities to talk about the text. And then this comprehension instruction is carried over into my guided reading groups where students work on decoding and on comprehension skills on texts that are on their instructional level. Now, guided reading groups allow me to work with my students at their instructional level and so that I can meet their different needs because they each have their own individual different needs. And after I set the purpose for their reading, each student begins reading his or her text. And the students in the video we're working on what to do when they come to a word that they don't know, how to figure out that word, and I teach them strategies like get your lips ready, sound out the whole word, use a picture clue, and so they were doing those things to try to decode words that were unfamiliar to them. And then I'm just there during guided reading to give them the guidance and the support that they need as they are reading their text. And after we finish their reading, then we were able to work on comprehension and see what they understand. But it's important that during a guided reading group that all students are busy reading and not waiting on me to get to them for their turn, but that they stay busy reading the whole time. So my students know that they have to stay busy reading even while I'm working with other students. And that helps to build their reading stamina some. And guided reading is important because I can work with them on their individual level and help them with their individual needs. So thank you for allowing me this opportunity.
I tell Jennifer that guided reading lesson, of course we have the whole thing, is perfect. I mean, I want to take it on national tour to show how guided reading should be done. She was doing it exactly as it should be, where she sets a purpose for the whole group, but then she's working with them individually, and you can see that in the little clip that you saw of her working with her guided reading group. Next, we had two second grade teachers we couldn't decide, so we meshed their videos together. And it worked perfectly because they were almost talking about the same standard. So we have Debbie Spears from Richmond County, and we have Kimberly Fullard from New Hanover County. So with my two second grade teachers come up and we'll show your video how we meshed it together.
A new learning target on our board, and I want you to help me read the learning target. We're going to talk a little bit about these two words that are pink, a little different color, okay? Read with me, please.
I can compare two paragraphs within non-fiction text.
I can compare two paragraphs within a nonfiction text. What does it mean to compare?
It means that to see how much, find out what the two things that have in common.
What do they have in common? How are they the same? What I want you to do right now, so I want you to turn to a partner on the carpet, and I want you to have a conversation about what you think we mean when we say the word paragraph. What is a paragraph? Okay, you can begin.
It's like a text where you compare and you can use things that
A way that these two texts, these two paragraphs compare to one another. Wyatt, how about you share who is your partner? All right, what did you and Kyra say about that?
Both of the paragraphs talk about the microscope looking at the snowflakes.
He said both of the paragraphs talk about him using a microscope to look at snowflakes.
So today we're going to read a story about habitats. On your whiteboards, I want you to tell me, what do you think fireflies and our story habitats have in common?
A firefly might have a habitat that people just do not know about yet.
You have your highlighter. You may highlight any important information that you think you are going to need. There are some questions on the next page. If you want to look at the questions first, so you know what you were looking for in the story, you may do so. So the first one is talking about how it connects to you. Okay? The second one is talking about how it connects to the world. So think about outside of the school. Think about when you see things on TV. Think about things like that. Number 3, how do you feel about what Dr. King had to go through? Tell me about how you feel about that. Do these questions make sense?
Yes.
Yes, Brady.
Do you do them in your literacy journal?
Yes. Answer these questions in your literacy journal.
So the people had to leave their cars parked in the middle of the road. Here's the second piece of evidence, for sure.
Good morning, and thank you so much for letting us showcase these amazing kids. They're really awesome and very special to work with. Kim and I would like to think that second grade is so pivotal, they had to have 2 of us up here to help explain the amazing things that go on in second grade. 2 specific areas of focus in the video that I was part of. One is the learning target. And so we know that it would really be meaningless to have a learning target if the students did not understand what that learning target was about. And so we worked really hard to put our focus of learning in child-friendly terms. And so my learning target was, I can compare 2 paragraphs within a text. And so a couple of strategies you've already heard mentioned all the way up is a turn and talk strategy. And so what we have the students do is turn and talk to one another about their understanding of what compare means. Now what you didn't see is we modeled by having 2 students stand up, and we talked about how the students were alike and how they were similar, and so how this same strategy could be used when we're looking at text. And so one of the awesome things about having a turn and talk strategy, the students are able to get their thinking here outside their head, and so they put it in words. And what's happening as they're talking, they're getting they're building their language skills. They're one of the standards that we have to look at is a speaking and listening standard, and so this gives the students an opportunity in their pair to speak and the other partner to listen. But another piece that's happening is sort of an informal assessment, because I'm able to go around the classroom and I'm able to listen to the students have this conversation, and I'm making mental notes of maybe some students that don't have clear understanding, and the students don't really know that I'm doing that, but it's just a great assessment piece for me to look at and to remember as we go through the instruction. Another strategy is to get thinking outside their head, is to put their thinking down in writing. And so on the paper we had little Post-it notes. And so when they were working with their partner, they could jot down their thoughts and ideas about how the two texts or two paragraphs within the text compare. And so that's another small piece of checking their thinking. The other focus was what you saw was a fluency passage. And so every week, every day, the students in my classroom get to interact with what we call an in-class fluency passage. And this passage is an on-grade level text. And so we work with this passage day in, day out. We talk about unknown vocabulary that may trip the students up. I model reading the passage fluently. We try to attach a video clip or a photograph that would make the topic of the passage real and relevant to the students. So this particular passage was called Blizzard. And so I had a feeling the only blizzard they may be familiar with is the one at Dairy Queen. And so I pulled up some footage of some actual blizzards that have happened, and the kids were immediately hooked and engaged in this passage. And so what we do with that passage, we read it every day. I read, we talk about it, and then they have an opportunity to read the passage and time themselves. And so at the bottom of the passage, you may or may not have noticed, there's a Monday through Friday graph that they just very quickly jot down, and they're responsible for monitoring their own growth with this passage. It's not about finishing the passage, it's not about completion of the passage, because we know that some of the students, this is a struggle for them, this particular on-grade level text. And so the goal, and what I really try to promote, is growing your number of words. And so on Monday, maybe they read 5 words, and on Tuesday, maybe 10. But by Friday, the hope is that they have increased their number of words, and that's the ultimate goal. I'm able to differentiate because when I go back to small group, then I'm able to pull passages and texts that are on the student's individual instructional level. So they get the best of both worlds. It's on grade level text as well as instructional level. And then, but the bigger piece than that is when it comes to fluency, you know, the students will sometimes say, I want to be a fluent reader, but I really try to, they know that what fluent reading really is about is your reading should sound like real talking. It should sound like real dialogue. It should be genuine. It shouldn't be too fast or too slow. We know that we pay attention to punctuation. We know that reading, you should sound like you mean it when you read. And so by doing all of this, putting all of these elements together, it ultimately leads to understanding of the text or whatever it is we're reading, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. And that understanding is what ultimately leads to them becoming amazing readers. And so you'll see that progression as we go through each grade level. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Also in the video you saw a lot about comparing. In Debbie's class she compared different paragraphs, where in my class you saw us comparing different texts, which also comes straight from our standards. In my small group I used a ReadWorks passage to compare with the mentor text. The mentor text comes with a program that we use in our county. We had read that text previously in the classroom, so they remembered what they read from that text with their comprehension and was able to compare it to the ReadWorks text that I used. You also saw the higher order thinking with the use of a Martin Luther King text. We learned about him all week. So at the end of the week, they had to take their KWL chart, and I'll explain what that is in a second. And they had to use all of their information from the week, and they had a project to do with that. I used the higher order thinking skills to enforce comprehension from the higher end of the comprehension continuum that we have. I'm able to gauge their learning through the use of the KWL chart, which stands for what you already know, what you want to know, and what you learned. I can also gauge their learning through the use of whiteboards. As Debbie spoke about, you want them to speak how they write. So I have my students do a lot of writing in the classroom, and I have them read what they write so they can hear themselves speaking, and they can also hear their peers speaking as well. Students use literacy journals to show the progress that they are making throughout the year. In my classroom, that's all we use. We have a journal for every subject. They keep their journals throughout the year, and I'm able to show them this is where you started at the beginning of the year. Now look at where you have come all the way to the end of the year. Finally, students pick good fit books for their sustained reading. At the beginning of the year, I help them pick their good fit books. Now towards the end of the year, they know what a good fit book is. They need to be challenged a little bit while they are reading. I want them to know some of the words that they are reading, but I want them to also have to decode some of the words that they are reading. Students are held accountable with their sustained reading because, as you saw, some of my students were reading while I was working with a small group. So they have a story elements chart that they have to fill out, and I check that daily. So they tell me what point they are in their story and what parts of the story that they use to fill out their story elements chart. Thank you.
When you read historical events, nonfiction, it's usually going to go in a sequence. And another word for a sequence, if you look up there, it's a bold-faced word. Does anybody read what sequence means? What do you think, Doll? In order. In order. Okay? And they did a little cartoon of the Vikings coming to America. And they basically put them in order of what happened. They use these words in here. Does anybody know what we call these words? If I said first and next and after a few and sometimes later on, Bear?
Transition.
Yes, they use those transition words and those help us sequence them in order. And it kind of goes along with what we've been talking about in social studies, and it kind of ties in with some of your vocabulary words like immigrant and native. President Thomas Jefferson asked France to sell the United States a vast area of land. Anybody want to use any clues? What do you think vast, in a vast area of land might be? James?
Very big.
A very large area of land. And I want to look specifically at paragraph 3, 4, and 5. If you were to look at 3, 4, and 5, let's pick out one important detail that really stands out in paragraph 3. So if you get your eyes on paragraph 3, let's focus in on the third paragraph real quick. I'm going to read this to you if you'll follow along with your eyes or your finger. The flag that Betsy Ross made was an important symbol in the fight for freedom. It helped the colonists feel proud. Why do you think the colonists felt proud having a flag? Tell me what's going on in the story so far.
So pretty much this is a book that tells you about combat in Minecraft. So you have like things like creepers, things like it tells you what can damage it, like bows and arrows, diamond swords falling, fire, TNT, lava cacti.
Sail, okay? So you've been reading a lot about immigrants, and one of our vocabulary words this week is native. I started thinking, well, the easiest way to kind of explain to them is just grab these Our State magazines. They're some of my favorites, and sometimes I might highlight in the magazine one of our vocabulary words so you can see what it's like in the story. Well, today I want to talk to you about a few people that were born in North Carolina. They're native to North Carolina, different than being an immigrant and coming to America from another country. If you're interested in more North Carolina natives, you could always go to the Our State website or just Google North Carolina natives. Good morning, everybody. My name is Michael Jeffries. I teach in New Hanover County, and I teach at Coddington Elementary School, and we're a year-round school. So what you just witnessed was the 90-minute block the first day after a long year-round holiday. So I hope you noticed what I noticed the first time I saw the video was how the routines and procedures were embedded in the classroom. And even after about 4 weeks off, the kids came in and fell right into place. I want to break down the video into basically 3 parts. You might have seen my whole group, my independent stations, and my small group reading stations. First of all, the whole group, I always address the kids 3 times a day. I ask them to come over to the carpet. Sometimes it's a read aloud, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. This just happened to be from a website, reading some nonfiction passages. And I'm addressing the standards that I need to teach in 3rd grade, that the students need to master. I'm setting them up 3 times a day to teach them. And usually it's about 5 to 10 minutes, not too long. Just don't want to bore them and talk to them for 30 minutes because I need them to go out and be independent readers. The students I have are not learning how to read, they're reading to learn. And what I'm setting them up with every time I do whole group is so they can go out, use the resources I'm providing, whether they're doing read to self or read to someone, work on words, work on writing, or listen to reading. You saw some of the students on the computer, and that doesn't necessarily mean they are listening to reading. We try to get them on the computers and use technology, whether it's the iPads or the laptops or the computers that the school's provided, to gain information that they can use that's going to help them be successful when they take those passages, or when they have to take a reading test and respond to text through that. So when they're out there, almost looks like a free-for-all, they get to choose what we call the daily 5. You know, allow the kids choice in the books that they read. But the evidence they're showing me when they come into my small groups, and what I call the CAFE, and CAFE stands for comprehension, accuracy, fluency, and expanded vocabulary. And when they come over to me in small groups, it's not the same students every day. It's not like maybe when I was in school and I was in the low reading group and I sat with the same kids every day. Those strategic groups are changing daily. And just because a student is fluent in reading does not mean they can comprehend the text they're reading. So sometimes I will have students in there that might not be as fluent as the person they're sitting next to, but we might need to be working on the same strategies so they can understand and comprehend the text they're reading. The strategies I teach, for instance, are basic strategies that you and I do every day. We might not think about it. A student might read a text, and just like I do at night sometimes, if I don't understand it or if I'm putting something together and my mind drifts off to something, I need to back up and reread it. So I use strategies like that. When they come into my small group, I address the standards that I do each day when I work with them in whole group. I want to make sure that they understand those standards. I want to go through passages with them. I want to give them strategies to help them be successful when they have to take those passages independently. I also take notes when they are done, like one of the last kids, and I was asking him about the book he chose, and it was Minecraft. I want to hear what they're doing when they're doing read to self. I want to know what books they're choosing. Just like Kimberly said, I don't want them, the goal is not for them to be fast, 100% accurate readers. The goal in the end is to be a voracious reader, I want them reading fluently, I want them understanding and comprehending what they are reading, but I want them to use expression, I want them to know when they get to quotation marks that someone else is speaking. I want them in the end to be a voracious reader, so I check in with them and I say, what are you working on? Well, I know what they're working on because I have a notebook right in front of me, and the last time I checked in with them, I said, how is that book? Where are you at in Tom Sawyer? Where are you at in the Boxcar Children? Last time I met with you, you were on page 45. Where are we at now? Tell me how that's gone. So I want to know that they are progressing in their reading. I want to know that the evidence is showing that while they are out, they're not just staring at a book. They're not just reading to someone and talking. So they have evidence they need to show me when they check in.
And I also want to get them to predict what's going to happen next in the story. And I'll jot down notes and when they come back the next time. And it's not every day. Some kids are. Some kids it's 1 or 2 times a week. One part of the video that wasn't in there that I was reminded of yesterday when they filmed, one little boy that was in the class, he was the one that was reaching over, grabbing a pencil over me. When he reads independently, I don't need to check in with him every day because I hear him over there laughing. So I know he's not just laughing on his own. He is reading and he is engaged and he laughs on his own, so I don't need him to come over to me every day. I also go through the stories, and some of the strategies for the cafe might be strategies for expanding their vocabulary. And it might be like if one of us were walking around downtown Raleigh today, if I didn't know a word, I might just look at you and ask you, what does that word mean? I want them to stop reading and ask the people, the students, their colleagues, the people beside them, instead of coming over and interrupting my group. I want them to go to websites, dictionaryreference.com. I want them to, if they can't find it, and it's not like when I was in school, please be in the dictionary if I can find this word. It is not that anymore. It's as easy as Googling a word. I've been at restaurants before and looked at the menu and gone, what is that, before I order it, and it's as easy as typing it in. But if they can't understand what the definition is, Google the image of it, get a mental picture in your head. So I hope you enjoy the video, and the end goal is just basically to be voracious readers and love to read. Thank you.
And we're going to finish up today with Kelly White, and Kelly is from Catawba County. And so let's look at Kelly's video.
Good, use that text. What kind of dogs?
Labrador retrievers.
All right, so we read a text about Labrador retrievers. How did we know it was a description structure? Ryland.
Because the text tells about what they did.
It talked about what they did. What else, Chance?
What color they are.
Talked about what they looked like, right?
How they can help.
How they can help. Good. So we read about Labradors. Then we read about the text structure, order, and sequence. What was our text about with order and sequence? And how did we know it was order and sequence? Which describes the connection between the two sentences below from paragraph 2. What is the question asking me to do?
So look for those two sentences.
Okay. Yep, we're going to look for those two sentences in paragraph 2. And we're going to look what is the connection between the two. So either highlight or underline that word connection. What does connection mean? If there's a connection between something or something's connected, what does that mean? Katya. Similar. Katya says similar. So does this kind of go with our text structure today? In 1912, Wilbur typhoid. He died 4 weeks later at the age of 45. Lived until he was 76 years old. In 1948, he died of a heart attack. Jet engines. Up with this next time we meet in groups, okay? But I want you to, so now that we're finished, you can go ahead and close your passage. I want you to take how we went through this passage and I want you to try and do it on your own. You can use your highlighters, like some of you highlighted. George liked to underline, all right? I want you to keep referring back to the text. So I'm going to give you a passage to work on your own. I'm going to spread some of you out throughout the room so you have some room, but some of you can stay here too, okay?
morning. Thank you for having me here today. As you have seen in my video, during my reading block I have 3 components. I teach a whole group lesson, I teach a guided reading group, and then in a minute you'll see a segment where students are working on early foundational skills in word work. During my whole group lesson, my students are working on 4th grade level text, so all students are exposed to grade level text during that time. We were working on text structure. As you saw, I use an anchor chart to introduce every new standard I teach. Students have an interactive notebook that they use every day. In that interactive notebook, they are also creating that anchor chart. It's a resource for them to refer back to throughout the time I'm teaching that standard if they forget what was a description structure. How can I identify a description structure? They add those clue words in that one column. They also have a visual representation of a graphic organizer that they can use to jot down their information that when they're reading the passage in the text, they can organize that so they can understand the structure better. After that, I went on and taught compare and contrast text. So we used a Venn diagram to compare and contrast collies and chihuahuas. And what I've been teaching them to use are various colors to go back to the text and underline what was similar between the two. They chose the color maybe blue, and they go back to the text and they underline in blue what was similar. Then they would transfer that to their Venn diagram, and the same thing with differences. Then I move on to small groups. I am lucky enough to have a parent volunteer that comes into my room twice a week for about an hour each time. She also takes a small group, and I give her resources to work with that group on their instructional level for her to work with while I am working with a group. This group you saw in the video was working on an instructional passage on text structure. And what I did with them was go through the questions, and we decomposed what the question was asking. I asked, what do they mean by connection? How are those 2 sentences connected? And they shared with me that they understood that it means how are they similar. Also in the anchor chart, we talk about academic vocabulary. The students circled describe, and they also circled structure. I want to make sure they know what the purpose is for their learning for that day and for that standard, so they are successful in getting everything they need to know to be able to complete the task at hand. Also, during my guided reading instruction, I teach them various strategies on how to go back to the text. Like I said in the video, some of the students like to use highlighters to go back and highlight their information. Some students just like to use their pencil. And then one little girl in the video had 3 different markers. She likes to use a different color for each question, so she knows that, okay, there is the evidence for question 1. I highlighted it in blue. Question 2 might be in red, and that's her strategy. After I worked with them on the instructional passage, they went off and did an independent passage, and they spread out throughout the room so they had room, they were comfortable. And then after that, I collect the data on that standard to see how is that going to guide my instruction. Do some of these students still need to move forward with the standard, or can I build on with that standard? And so in the next segment you're about to see, some of my students still need those early foundational skills. Text structure is on that upper end of that the comprehension continuum, but to be advanced readers, you need to have your foundation of word work and specific word patterns. So the child that you're going to see me working with is working on long vowel patterns.
So there's just one vowel. So that means the rest of them are consonants. So this is a consonant, 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 if I can write it, consonant. So look at your categories here. Which one do you think light will go under?
I think this one.
Why is it going to go under that one?
Because they have a vowel. And there's 3 here. because it is fun. I love reading because it makes me happy. I love reading because it makes me a good reader. I love reading because I want to be smart. I love reading because I want to be a teacher. I love reading because it makes me fun.
As you have watched the videos today, we hope you noticed how reading skills build toward the ultimate goal of comprehension. When referring to the continuums, you can better understand that. In kindergarten, instruction focused on alphabetic principle, basic phonics, specifically linking letters to sounds, and recognizing sight words, as well as asking and answering questions about text. In first grade, phonics instruction was differentiated to target short and long vowel patterns, as well as retelling a text to demonstrate sequence of events. In second grade, the instructional focus demonstrated developing fluency and accuracy in continuous text. In third grade, comprehension, instructional focus demonstrated merging thinking with content while arranging sequence and events integrating social studies. In fourth grade, you saw the building of how the early foundational skills of phonics and fluency lead to understanding text structures with the ultimate goal of being authentic readers. Thank you.